more than 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images. CNN teams are carefully sifting through the largest, and what the Justice Department says is the last, batch of Jeffrey Epstein files.
On Friday, January 30th, the final bastion of the American political establishment's most guarded secrets was breached. This was not a slow leak, but a systemic deluge. The Department of Justice, led by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, released a cataclysmic final tranche of 3 million pages from the Jeffrey Epstein investigative files.
We complied with the statute, we complied with the act, and there is no, we did not protect President Trump, we didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents.
This event, which many believed would be delayed indefinitely or sanitized into oblivion, represents the total collapse of the fortress of silence that has protected the global elite for decades. We are witnessing the fall of the fortress in real time. The sheer volume is incomprehensible. 3 million documents, 2,000 videos, and over 180,000 images. A data-mined nightmare that has instantly overwhelmed the digital infrastructure of every major news outlet in the Western world. This release, following a missed December deadline and intense pressure from the 2025 Epstein Files Transparency Act, includes references to Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and the current Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The metaphor of a fortress is no longer sufficient. This is a controlled demolition of the social and political architecture of the 21st century. As reported by The Guardian and the Associated Press within the last 48 hours, the documents were not just dry legal texts, but a visceral catalog of interactions, including a July 2021 FBI interview where Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly presented a woman to Donald Trump, whispering, "Oh, I think he likes you." The release was strategically dumped on a Friday evening, a classic flood-the-zone tactic intended to bury the lead under the weekend's news cycle. But the sheer gravity of the revelations has made concealment impossible. The atmosphere in Washington is not one of triumph, but of profound, paralyzing anxiety. The fortress has not just fallen, it has been vaporized, leaving the powerful exposed to the harsh, unblinking light of public scrutiny. This is no mere PR disaster. It is a structural failure of the electoral base. According to a specialized CNN poll conducted by SSRS and released in the shadow of this document dump, public satisfaction with the government's transparency has hit a terminal low. Only 6% of Americans believe the federal government has been honest about the Epstein records, a number so low it suggests a total decoupling of the citizenry from the state. Even more devastating for the current administration are the figures from the latest NPR-PBS News Marist poll. While 87% of Republicans still claim to support the president's overall performance, his handling of the Epstein files has split the base down the middle, with approval on this specific issue cratering to just 45%. The demographic data reveals a generation gap that is now a chasm. Younger voters across all party lines are demanding the unredacted truth, with a ferocity that traditional spin doctors cannot contain. Quinnipiac University's latest national poll, processed in the last 48 hours, confirms that 63% of voters explicitly disapprove of the ham-fisted redactions and the perceived effort to shield powerful enablers. This is the anatomy of a collapse because it proves that the Trump 2.0 administration's attempt to manage this scandal has backfired. The America First base is increasingly viewing the withholding of these files as an elite-first strategy. When 79% of the population, according to YouGov, demands the immediate release of all remaining classified evidence, any politician standing in the way is not just resisting a trend. They are standing in the path of a tectonic shift. The numbers don't lie. The political capital of the inner circle is being liquidated at a rate of 1.5% per hour as the public digests the scale of the 3 million-page betrayal. We are seeing a demographic realignment where the primary identity of the voter is no longer partisan, but victim of deception. The Epstein Files are not just a social scandal, they are a direct threat to the global financial architecture. The inclusion of current Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and billionaire Elon Musk in the latest documents has sent shockwaves through the markets. According to the Friday morning reports from Bloomberg and the Associated Press, emails revealed that Musk reached out to Epstein on at least 2 occasions to plan visits to the Caribbean. Allegations that, while uncorroborated in terms of wrongdoing, introduce an intolerable level of key man risk to some of the world's most valuable companies. We are observing the emergence of an economic black swan. The global insurance and bond markets are already pricing in the Epstein discount. Large-scale institutional investors are scrutinizing high-trust elite networks for any connection to the 180,000 newly released images. The files contain a spreadsheet of tips to the FBI's National Threat Operations Center that mention big orgy parties involving models, tech moguls, and political giants. This isn't just gossip, it's a liability. If the Commerce Secretary or major tech CEOs are caught in a web of secondary investigations, as demanded by Representative Jamie Raskin in his Sunday deadline ultimatum, the liquidity of the U.S. venture capital market could freeze. We are talking about a systemic risk where the collateral is no longer real estate, but the reputation of the global decision-making class. Insurance premiums for directors and officers, D&O insurance, are expected to spike by 300% as the 500 DOJ lawyers continue to struggle with redaction errors that have already exposed several survivors' identities. The market hates uncertainty, and there is nothing more uncertain than 3 million pages of potential criminal evidence against the people who run the world's largest economy. This is the beginning of a reputational Great Depression, where the currency of influence is being devalued to zero. The psychological portrait of the leadership in the last 72 hours is one of profound isolation and escalating fury. Reports from inside the administration, echoed by recent Daily Beast analyses, describe a president who has moved from dismissive irritation to a siege mentality. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. This creep, the president reportedly snapped at aides. But the files tell a different story of a long-standing, complex history. The release includes a 2002 email where Epstein asks for advice on how Trump should answer questions about their friendship, and a birthday book for Epstein's 50th containing a signature that appears to be Trump's, accompanied by a drawing of a naked woman. A document the White House has scrambled to label a fake or falsely submitted image. This is the psychology of a leader whose realization that he cannot fire the past. The isolation is not just physical, it is ideological. By initially resisting the release of these files before being forced by Congress, the leader has signaled a fear that his base now smells. The dog that hasn't barked, as Epstein once chillingly described Trump in a 2011 message to Maxwell, has finally been forced to growl, but it is the growl of a cornered figure. We see a leader who once called Epstein terrific, now realizing that the 2,000 videos in the DOJ's possession are a sword of Damocles hanging over his legacy. The anger reported in the Oval Office is not the anger of a fighter, but the rage of a man who realizes his flood-the-zone strategy of misinformation has been met with a 3 million-page wall of counterfact. He is surrounded by 500 lawyers who are failing to protect him, and his only response is to retreat further into the Mar-a-Lago bunker of his own making. The most dangerous threat to the current power structure is not coming from the streets, but from within the marble halls of the Department of Justice and the silent competitors waiting in the wings. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, in a testy news conference on Friday, admitted that his department had to review 6 million pages, but only released half. This discrepancy has created a fifth column of suspicion. Representative Jamie Raskin and the House Judiciary Committee have set a Sunday deadline, which expires in mere hours, for the release of unredacted versions, claiming the DOJ is improperly shielding people from scrutiny. This is the betrayal of the elites. We are seeing a new class of silent competitors, younger, cleaner political figures within both parties, who are using the Epstein Files as a scalpel to remove the old guard. Even within the administration, the Pam Bondi Justice Department is being accused by figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of hiding the true majority of the files in violation of the law. The betrayal is systemic. The 500 lawyers tasked with the review are themselves leaking details about the ham-fisted redactions. One such leak, highlighted by NPR's Stephen Fowler, revealed that a picture of the president's face was found in the files hiding behind a black square. When the mechanisms of the state, the DOJ and the FBI, can no longer effectively hide the tracks of the leadership is effectively over. The internal enemy is anyone who sees the 2,000 videos and realizes that the survival of the institution now requires the sacrifice of the individual at the top. The silent competitor doesn't need to speak. They only need to wait for the Sunday deadline to pass. We conclude this emergency broadcast with a technical postscript on the sheer mathematical impossibility of fixing the damage. The era of the controlled narrative ended on January 30, 2026. You cannot redact 3 million pages with 100% accuracy. The DOJ has already admitted to errors where victims' names were exposed in one copy, but blacked out in another. This inconsistency is the crack in the dam that will lead to a total washout. With 180,000 images and 2,000 videos now in the hands of the DOJ and partially accessible through the Freedom of Information Act and congressional oversight, the digital footprint of the Epstein network is too vast to be scrubbed. Even if the current administration survives the Sunday deadline, they cannot survive the math. It would take a human being reading 24/7 over 100 years to fully digest this release. However, AI-driven forensic analysis will dismantle these 3 million pages in less than a week. The truth is no longer a human discovery. It is a computational certainty. The broadcast ends on a chilling note. The mention of a black vehicle used to move Epstein's body in 2019, while a white van distracted the media, is a perfect metaphor for this release. The public has spent years watching the white van, but the black vehicle of the real evidence has finally arrived at its destination. The clock has run out. The files are the final record of an era that is now, mathematically and morally, at its end. The end of an era is not a feeling. It is a 3 million page fact. Good night, and look to the files.